What is up, everybody? We are back. Streams are back. It's been a minute. But we're coming back with a banger. Because we're joined today of John Hook, who I think on like the daily active user side, you have touched more people via crypto than many people ever dreamed to. And you also have such a experience from having built in the space and seeing what users are getting value from, especially on the info side. I think we can dive into so many topics that people don't even think about because the areas that consumers haven't even thought about um, uh, because they haven't been rewarded for it. Um, I think start high level, John, your background, how you got to this point in your journey. Tell us about Play Ember, tell us about ConsumerFi, and we'll kind of just flow into the conversation from there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, look, thanks for having me on, Hunter. I really appreciate it. So yeah, I mean, look, my background, I've been in crypto for a while now. Actually, my before crypto, kind of grew up in building like ad tech and like technology for advertising and gaming. That was like my first startup. And then for when we kind of started playing, though, it was still in the sort of early days of whatever you want to label it, like Web3 gaming, crypto gaming. But I remember writing our first like white paper and like our vision for when we started the company. It was actually really it was really simple, right? It was having spent a lot of time in Web 2, and again, these numbers, everyone loves big numbers, but if you think about like mobile advertising specifically, like mobile gaming advertising, that's like a $6-7 billion industry. And the thesis was real simple. We see a massive gap between consumers, gamers, because not everyone is a gamer that plays games, particularly the games that we make, they're just consumers. We see a massive gap between that value that they are contributing. So when you're playing free to play mobile games, you are giving your time, and how you get rewarded for it, because you generate these billions of dollars of ad revenue and you get nothing back, right?
It's crazy.
Facebook, everyone gets it back. It's just real simple. It's not complicated. It's like, well, maybe some people might like the idea of actually I play a game and then I get a reward. And we know that's true already in Web 2, because you can play games and get PayPal vouchers and all that kind of stuff. But like, how do we do it with crypto? Where does that alignment sit? And what do we need to build to do that? So, fast forward a few years, we built a lot of technology on the back end to actually enable this. We tested so many tokens, meme coins, ETH, Solana, but the sum of everything is we kind of found the answer, right? We found what this thing is that consumers are happy to receive in response for their time generating ads in games, and it's actually Bitcoin, right? That's like the thing that they all wanted, right? So, the past 12 months have been kind of fun because we've had a lot of high profile people around the world shilling Bitcoin and talking.
It's great for business when the biggest names in the world are shilling the thing that you reward users with.
Right. So, the long and happy is, so we kind of figured out, okay, well, this is interesting. We now have like a repeatable model that rewards consumers fairly for their time. And then the other thing that we saw was some so we had a separate Discord for these games as well, because they're not really, these are not Web3 users, right? These are just Web2 consumers, right? We advertise on Facebook, on TikTok, on YouTube, right? We don't hide Bitcoin in any way. And then they were like, hey, we don't mind playing games to get Bitcoin. Are there other things we could do to earn Bitcoin, right? So then we, started adding in some tasks and surveys, again, rewarding them for their time, their data, the insights they provide with Bitcoin. So like, that's kind of interesting. So we now have around like 800,000 monthly active users. There's a lot in the US, actually.
I was going to ask you what your demo was, because it's so interesting. When I started looking, I was like, well, I remember that there's a lot of these like survey companies out there, and that became like a fad back in like 2014, 15, I know, for like secondary incomes for people. And it was huge in the US, and then we saw it expand into some of these other countries of lower income levels. But for you guys, you're seeing like across the globe equal, or do you have like areas that like pop up more? Or
I mean, I would say if you look at it from a revenue perspective, about 70% of our revenue comes from the US, right?
Oh, wow.
Exactly, right. It's really interesting. It's almost the opposite when if you specifically think about Web3 gaming or crypto gaming, you see the opposite. But yeah, for us, we were like, okay, well, this is really interesting. And then we just answer, based on that audience saying, hey, are there other things I can do to earn Bitcoin that basically reward me for things I'm doing that aren't games? We were like, well, that's a fairly obvious question. We've got, maybe a couple of billion gamers on the planet. What about the other 8 billion consumers, right? That don't play games. How might they get, fairly rewarded for their time using this, almost like repeatable kind of crypto incentive model that we have.
There's
So that's really
there's a mechanic that works. You can bridge that to other industries.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of where it started, right? We just saw. I mean, you've got ad dollars. You think about the other industries. We've got a multi-billion-dollar digital value misalignment here between consumers and the value they are driving into gaming, into retail, or now we'll get onto it. Think about AI, right? All of the models that people are training, and the multi-billion-dollar, soon-to-be trillion-dollar AI industry. So yeah, we just see a huge multi-billion-dollar misalignment between consumers, the value that you create in multiple different forms, and how you don't get rewarded for that. So that's really then where Consumerify came about, which is okay. So we've got the games, we have the underlying technology behind the game. So a consumer graph, social graph, that's the engine room. What sort of front end, what applications or experiences can we now enable for consumers that don't want to get rewarded for their time and data through games to also be rewarded? So that's really how how Consumerify was born, from that just very simple, understandable consumer sort of insight that we had then validated through Playember, and now we're at the early process now of just of branching outside of gaming into a broader consumer digital audience.
Yeah. So you guys had to start with gaming. You found the mechanic. You saw that this could be expanded outside of it. And now you're building and expanding this mechanic into all these different industries. Um, I am curious here on, like, where are you starting? Like, is there verticals that you're targeting for Consumerify specifically to start out, or is it kind of, all like a general service, I guess would be the way to describe it?
Yeah, so I think so. Where we're starting is this, before we get to the sort of vertical industries, like
Mhm.
the thing that we need and you need for this to work is to kind of reclaim some of that value, right? And this billion-dollar misalignment. There's a few things that actually need to happen behind the scenes that we can talk about a little bit, because some of this stuff is a bit boring, but it's also actually really important for this to work. So there's kind of two things behind the scenes, right? For a consumer graph, okay, let's break down what is a consumer graph. Effectively, it's just a database that's got lots of different data points that you as a consumer are contributing through different ways. It could be through games, ads you watch, ads you don't watch, games you play, games you don't play. But think about all the other bits of digital information every day you're just sprinkling across, Web 2 and Web 3, and how disparate that is.
Digital footprint, if you may.
Yeah, exactly. Your digital footprint, right? Your digital DNA. So that's the first challenge, because to fairly reward people, you need that verifiable source of truth. We need to be able to see as much as we can about you, and then start applying different rules to it to understand what is and isn't valuable. What can we verify? What's real, what's not real.
Right.
So actually, that's the initial starting point for this to be successful. Because if you don't have that, then you can only reward people for the things that you can see and ideally verify, but you might be missing something else that's even more valuable, but you can't reward them for that because you can't see it. So that's the first thing that we're in the process of building right now, which is the sort of Consumerify app that is in beta at the moment, inviting people in to start whatever they choose to share. I want to be really clear about that. We're not saying you have to share stuff. Whatever you feel comfortable sharing across, let's say, 3 pillars initially, across your social value, so your social network, your reputational value or capital, what people say about you. So in Web3 terms, we announced a partnership with Ethos. In Web2 terms, LinkedIn. The obvious one, your financial kind of capital, your net worth. So again, if you think about Web 2, that's like in the US, like your FICO score, or in certain parts of the world where Experian are, your kind of credit score.
Sure.
But we're trying to look at it much broader than that. And then the sort of fourth pillar that's not live yet, but clearly, outside of that, there's, let's say like expertise or skill, right? Some people that is playing games. So some people it is
but verifiable skill. I think that's probably one point that people listening should understand. It's verifiable skill. It's not me saying, I am the best. Like, I've never juggled in my life. I can't just go and be like #1 juggler right here. Like, there has to be a measurable way of proving that.
Yeah. So exactly. So that's the first bit. We need to put that all together. And then the second part of that, this is sort of where the AI piece comes in, not just putting it in for the sake of it, is what AI, and we think about consumer graph, what that can now help us do is start making sense of all of that quicker than we could do before, but specifically get more accurate at actually almost anticipating and predicting what it is that you want or need based on all the things that you are effectively telling yourself, because I think this is another key difference. You are training yourself. These are your own models. This is your own DNA that that you want or need. So we have some daily questions in the platform that might seem a bit stupid, but they're not. They're all little pieces of like inference, little pieces of information that tell us a little something about you, that when you stack it all up and we combine it with other pieces of information, are incredibly helpful. And this never stops, by the way. This is, digital DNA, I think you call it digital footprint. I use the term intelligent property because it's this living AI-powered DNA of you that should never stop. It should always be learning. It should always be getting smarter. It should be working for you, right? Learning, right. It's your mind. So
evolving.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the first kind of key part. And then, of course, the second bit is like, okay, John, this sounds great, but what can I do with this thing, right? If you're in Web3, how do I earn?
Yeah, where do I make money, John?
How does it make me money? How does it like retire my bloodline, right? And I think here also then there's a bit of a secondary problem. I was just on a phone call talking about this, and when you think about, okay, how can I use this? I think part of the issue at the moment is the word agent. Because when you talk to, I don't know, if you talk to your friends about it that are in Web3 and I talk about agent, they don't necessarily know what that is. They know what ChatGPT is. Oh, that's an app that I use. Got it.
Right.
Or this is an AI tool that I use. What's an agent? That's like a Hollywood movie, or it's like James Bond or something. And then in Web3, I think in this first version of AI, again, we all use the word agents, but I'm not sure we actually know necessarily, unless you're an expert, what this thing is. What does it do for me? I just know that
and even if some people do, I think that, especially in crypto, I think a lot of people have been tainted by the agents they have interacted with, which are, unfortunately, they are just a prompted wrapper of ChatGPT with a Twitter account that, replies slop back. There's no context. There's no information pool that they're pulling from. Like, that's the more complex side that you guys are getting into.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing sort of deeply personal. So back to your original question, now we've got there, is like, okay, well, what do I do with this thing? And it's not a one size fits all. There's gonna be some people that I don't want to do anything with this other than just earn from it. And the obvious references people will start thinking of is like Kaito Earn, right?
Sure.
Okay, so I now have got ownership of whatever data I've chosen to share in one place. You can now see far more than just my my social value or some sort of short-term thing that I might be able to do. You can look at me more holistically and start thinking about longer-term value. Who or how might I get rewarded for that? Whether it is an airdrop, someone feels more comfortable giving because they can see more about you, that there's a direct fit based on what they can see, or someone's doing a capital raise for a Bitcoin lending platform, but they know that you are someone that uses lending platforms, that you can see from the history that you shared that you provide liquidity. Maybe you even hold Bitcoin. My point is, there is just a much more comfortable and fairer value exchange in that scenario. But maybe for other people that are genuinely not, you shouldn't be scared of AI, right? There's a lot of FUD around AI at the moment because I understand it. It's easy to be scared of something that you don't necessarily understand. But I mean, right now, if you think about crypto and creators, AI, it should be your best friend in terms of things you can do with it. So if we take you, for example, think about all of that knowledge, the personality, the preferences. Think about all the people that interact with your content. Think about all the bookmarks that you put on Twitter. Think about the time you put into these shows and your scripts. Imagine if that could all be automated. There was like an AI hunter that was doing that all for you. Like, wouldn't that be great?
I'll pay for it right now. I need it.
That's what I mean.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. Who wouldn't want that?
That's what I mean. Your own personal AI that you're training it on your tweets, your audience, your style, your bookmark tweets. You're adding in AI analytics. So, who are your audience? What do they post with and engage about the most? You can pick the top 10 trending topics that you're interested on Twitter, for example, so that AI learns about those, picks the best performing ones. And then the output of that is, again, it could be, okay, I still want to sort of finalize. I'm not quite comfortable yet to click just auto post for me, but I get these personalized tweets that have got a higher percentage chance of increasing my engagement and therefore following a monetization. Literally while I'm asleep, I could have 8 tweets written, or it can do full end-to-end content. I mean, I'll send it to you so you can pin it. But our chief product officer, David, this is what he uses every day. He's just now got his own AI agent, which is basically him. It's his face, it's his voice, it's his expressions that all of this is then feeding into. All he has to do is just slightly tweak. Okay, today I actually want to focus more on, let's say, Pengu and Pudgy Penguins, and it will just change the output of what AI David is talking about. So yeah, in summary, I mean, like anything, if you can see this thing, it's much easier to understand rather than talking about the technology. Just talk to me about the thing it can do and how it can help like me grow. But it doesn't always have to be, of course, you as a creator earning money. That's the output. But to earn money, it's about, more intelligent content, more intelligent analytics that then grow your followers, grow your engagement, that increase your monetization and brand partnerships. And that's the flywheel. And that just never stops, right? The AI hunter is just constantly learning and improving. And it's already there. It's not like this is something years away. This is already, the technology's there. So the kind of question is, who are going to be the people that start breaking away now the fastest and just understand these creative use cases of AI?
So many questions here. One, I think the starting one is breaking down the difference between InfoFi and AgentFi. I think that's a good area. Like, I think it's very easy to hear this and think, well, this is like, in my head, I'm like, oh, maybe this is InfoFi, but then there's also AgentFi. Aspects of it, like, are you one or the other?
Yeah, I mean, so InfoFi, I think, is a tricky label, because I mean, as soon as you hear InfoFi, what do you think? Where does your mind go?
It does go back to Kaito for sure, like Kaito, Cookie, Wallquack or Wall Connect, like all the ones that are doing things in that space.
Yeah, and I think that's a blessing and a curse. I think, I mean, it's all over the timeline again today. I think, Kaito have done a phenomenal job, right? I think, and I was on a space with Serpin, and he mentioned this point, so I'm not going to claim credit for this, but he made the beautiful and simple point is that you've got marketing tooling, right? That some of these platforms effectively are, but InfoFi requires the fi piece. You need to be able to trade something. So I think that's what Kaito are doing. Effectively, we know this Yapsa sort of attention, but most of these other platforms, what are you really trading here, right? It's just making lots of noise, low value signal for real short-term games, to be honest, right? And hence why Kaito have had to react due to the sort of feedback from their users and have had to sort of correct the path that they're on. But that's okay, because they're learning from the first part of their product. But I think InfoFi generally is still in its infancy, right? I think we are.
Oh, it's so early.
Trying to tokenize almost any piece of information and then legitimize it in terms of, right, we've just tokenized something else today, right? And there's lots of great platforms playing around with it. Like opinions.fun is a really interesting concept, right?
Yep.
Tokenizing opinions. It's a bit like, Myriad and prediction markets to an extent, or, time.fun on Solana, right? They're trying to, sort of tokenize the concept of time. So I think it's still in its infancy. I think the problem is we are getting dragged down by V1, right? I think that's really holding us back and is stopping people from really seeing beyond that. So yeah, for us, I'm trying to position us as, InfoFi is an interesting concept, but when I think about your digital DNA, right? An AI powered these models that you can then, plug into your own AI. You might be able to take those models into other apps to get deep personalized experiences. I mean, it doesn't necessarily sound like InfoFi to me. It sounds more like consumer AI. That's really what that is. But then when I think about AgentFi, that's I think that's first of all quite a different audience. If you think about a lot of the people that are talking about AgentFi, there's maybe some overlap, but it's also quite a different audience that are generally quite intrigued by, AI powered experiences. And a lot of that in Web3 tends to, not surprisingly, be around DeFi and kind of trading agents.
Obviously, yes.
That's more really where they're focusing on AI, the tokenization of trading, the tokenization of models, of like agent models, the tokenization of almost like intelligence, for want of a better word, because that's effectively what if we're tokenizing Hunter, what are we tokenizing here? Intelligence. It's not as sexy as like tokenizing time, but I think they're kind of going away with each other. One, I think, is really about technology and innovation, and I would say long-term thinking. The other for me at the moment is, bar a few companies are very much stuck in this short term that is a wrapper effectively for, right, let's just chase an airdrop, right? Because and at the moment it's very geared towards socials, right? The number of, and a specific platform, it's very geared towards Twitter. Emilios puts out great content on this, saying, Twitter is the L1, all these other platforms the L2. They're kind of playing that game, and I think those are the main differences I see. Short term versus long term, like genuine, fascinating technology that can drive personal growth and development and revenue versus, short term, let's just say airdrop hunting.
Yeah. The part of this that you keep kind of like touching on, but I think everybody is curious on, because we talked about at the beginning, but everybody wants to own their footprint. They want to own their intelligence. They want to have a piece of that. You specifically say in your Twitter bio, it's about consumers owning. Would love to jump into that and how like you are solidifying that ownership of your information and your intelligence.
Yeah, so I think, again, if you think about it, I mean, again, I'm not funding ChatGPT. I mean, I use ChatGPT. I love Chorus. It's a great tool. But there's a simple reality that is a centralized service, right? I don't, again, you just accept in that model that, okay, I get the outcome. Chorus, I pay like $100 a month for it, and it's a great tool. I'd recommend it to anyone. But I know that everything I'm doing is going beyond that, like my information, right? I don't own really anything on there, and that's okay. All we're saying is with blockchain technology now, it's as simple as, well, take ChatGPT and almost just put a ironclad box around it. So what you say, everyone jokes around it. Oh, ChatGPT is my therapist. I can talk to it confidentially. Well, you're not, right? Someone else can basically see all your, personal issues that you're talking to GPT about. But basically just saying, put that in a decentralized server so that only you has access to it. You can delete it anytime, and you can also control, when we think about then monetizing your intelligent property, you can then control who has access to that, and and what that value exchange is, right? It's that simple when we think, because people love to overcomplicate decentralization. It is a lot more complicated than that, but at a simple level, that's literally just what we're talking about, right? Stop training someone else's AI model, right? Start training a model that is yours, that you own, and that you can determine how and where you use that and the value exchange for that, right? Every time you may not necessarily earn from it. It's just, you might just get a more entertaining, more personal experience because you're using everything, your model that is trained on the things you like and don't like. And you can sign in just like you would with your, Google or your Apple account into a third party app that you've given permission to access your, intelligent property, and it just instantly changes that experience in that app, whether it's
Yeah.
booking a holiday, whether it's reading a sports app, right? We don't
It's
have to
hard to understand unless you've experienced it. Like I didn't understand this until like a week or two ago. I watched a video of a guy. He's like in his Tesla driving to work, and he uses like Rock, like in X. I don't know how he did it. But it was like good morning, and it was like, do you want like, and it was like very explicit. Like, do you want like, a hype up for the day, or do you want your usual like breakdown of like what's going on? And he's like, hype me the fuck up. Like, I was like, oh my God, there's so much emotion. And it had so much context to like who this guy was and like almost like inside jokes back and forth with what the agent was saying. I was like, oh wow, like that is such a different experience than if I pull out ChatGPT app on my phone, turn on voice mode, and I have this conversation with this lady being, like if you want to cook a steak, you do it this way. Like it that isn't what I would expect for like a conversation with an AI model that knows who I am and is like, oh, this is exactly how he wants to be told and entertained and informed.
Yeah, but I think that's the thing. I think there's going to be different modes to this depending on how deep and how personalized you want to go. I mean, it's happening already. Um, someone tweeted me today because they know I'm really passionate about this topic, and one application of it basically creating an AI version of myself and an AI version of my mind. And there's lots of people playing around with it. But they tweeted me today because I'm from the UK, in case you hadn't figured with the accent. But a UK politician today has created an AI avatar of himself because he believes it's going to give his constituents more access to him and be able to talk to him and process more of their issues faster than just him as a human being, because time, there's only so much time he's got in the day around meetings to actually
Right.
meet people that have voted for him. And I'm like, okay, that's a really, really nice use case of it, right?
Yeah.
It's not overly complicated, but the
Football
immediate
managers are next on that. I'm telling you, like they're next. All the fans who want to give feedback, like there you go. You want access to the coach and the staff, there you go.
but exactly that, and that's the thing. You're already thinking about this. Is where I think, to my earlier comment about agents, we've got a bit lost. If you just start thinking about these as like consumer apps and entertainment, that you shouldn't even think about AI. It's just in the background. It's just an entertaining experience or thing. These things are already starting to happen. Like I saw Jesse put a tweet out. There's like an AI version of Jesse that someone's built on base already, right? That's what I mean. These aren't abstract concepts. They're already starting to happen. But I think the key thing is that there's a great podcast that Stephen Bartlett was talking about this, that mustn't get lost in this conversation when we start talking about our digital DNA and our creators going to get replaced by AI deepfakes. The simple answer is I actually don't think they will, because I think for, like you mentioned, like sports stars, celebrities, subject matter experts, big creators in crypto, part of the value with the audience is them, right? It's that concept of trust. They just want to know that it's them. Just because it's an AI version of you doesn't disintermediate that. So long as we can verify that it is actually you, right? It's your voice, it's your expressions, your face. That's really important. I think it's just going to be like you got it straight away. It's just an extension of yourself. Like, let's take Mr. Beast as an example. He's got, I don't know, 8-12 different channels on YouTube in different languages, right? That are kind of like dubbed. It's not him.
Yep.
Well, yeah, why couldn't he just have an AI agent of Mr. Beast that, if you're in China and you want to talk to Mr. Beast in Mandarin, well, you can do that. It's actually his voice. It's him. It's all trained on him. It sounds like him, just speaking a different language. It's just another way to engage your global audience that in turn represents a new revenue opportunity. So that's why, with my background of just building like creative tech, that's why I just think, a bit like AI and gaming and crypto. The same now with AI and blockchain. I think just in this first version, we got a bit lost with all these agents and workflows. There's so many creative use cases that, you know, AI and blockchain can empower. And I think that's really what we're, you know, outside of the tech and the consumer graph behind the scenes, that, you know, is incredibly important to create that personalization. What we're now working on, you know, ourselves, but also partnering with people on, is, yeah, let's just get our head down and actually create cool consumer applications and tools that people will use, right? And let's just remove that barrier, because that's just been part of the problem initially. Outside of a few obvious examples that we've mentioned, like ChatGPT, or you go in the App Store, the ones that, you know, beautify your face, or, you know, turn your room into like the dream makeover, that kind of stuff. You know, that's already there, right? Great use cases of AI. But I think that's, yeah, I think that's where I think certainly for crypto, for people on Twitter, that they just want to see things that they can understand. And to your earlier question, how does it make me money? If they can see that, you know, I hate the word flywheel, but if they can see the money wheel, okay, now I'm talking. If this thing can genuinely make me money, and it just augments stuff I'm already doing, but just makes it more intelligent, you know, faster, I'm listening.
I also think there's there's an interesting point here, which is there's often, especially in crypto, we see this where there's a disconnect between reward and the value created by enacting with an action or doing something. Um, we see this happen all the time with a lot of these companies that are like going to market, and they're like, oh, like, you know, you need to retweet this tweet, do this, do that, and we're gonna give you like airdrop.
Yeah.
And so you have a bunch of people doing this that have no like real skin in the game. They're not your like core user, but they see free money, and you're giving them outsized value for creating very little value for you. I mean, y- would love to maybe dive like deeper into like how you guys are solving that, and measuring that, around like consumer scoring and relevancy. Like that is like a really broken flywheel, or part of the flywheel in crypto right now, that not a lot of people talk about.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's, I mean, part of it is that, you know, that's the game. There were tweets around it today. You know, is it right for companies to sort of inflate metrics, or kind of farm the farmers to get the sort of, you know, optimal TG listings that we want? But, you know, I mean, look, you can be cynical about it. We're all getting monetized somewhere, right? In some shape or form. People will always look to. Some people will look to cheat the system, right? If I can go farm something and spend $50,000, but I know there's somehow I can cheat it and make $100,000 through, you know, like an LP or an airdrop. Of course, why would I not do that, right? That's a big part of crypto, is financial gain. So, you know, I think Kaito are, you know, with some of their updates, are making sort of a step in a direction to make their stance clear on it. But people, you know, you're busy. You're always going to look for things that give you a maximum reward for your time. So that's not going away. But it's also that cannot apply to everyone, right? It just, the unit economics just don't work.
It won't.
There's not,
It'll never be,
if
you know,
you're purely talking about, you know, social following and distribution, it's just, you know, it's basic maths. So if we take a step back in terms of, okay, so that will apply to a group of people, but there's a whole group of people that maybe don't qualify for that, but have got value accrued in a different area, right? It's not just about having, you know, giant followers. It's like, you know, like Serpin thinks with ethos, right? It's about what other people say about you, right? It's about your reputation that has value. And some of the people that have got really high ethos scores don't necessarily have the biggest number of followers, or even smart followers, because maybe that's not where they choose to invest their time. You know, we're starting to see something quite interesting already on our platform, where, and I think people are starting to understand it now. They're like, okay, some of these people we see high up on your leaderboard, are they're just a KOL. They're just part of this kind of Kaito crowd that have just got loads of your points, because they're just botting the system. Whereas our model is actually about looking at all of your value. And, you know, I can't, you know, we're not here, to be really clear, we're not doxing anyone publicly, right? We're not trying to link wallets or any of this kind of stuff. A bit like, you know, Cerebro, right? You just see a percentage of their holding, you don't see the wallet amount. You know,
yep.
all I can share is that the way our algorithm works is, you know, there is a weighting to, you know, if let's put it this way, if Kaito is kind of what you say, ethos is, or your reputation is what other people say about you, then let's say in Web3 terms, what your wallet show us is what you're actually doing, right? So what we're just trying to do at a simple level with that scoring is fairly balanced. People that are maybe talking about stuff, but actually doing the thing that they are talking about, right? Whether that is providing liquidity, whether that is actually using a blockchain, whether it's staking, whether it's buying NFTs, whatever it is, it all has value. So that's really what we are trying to create, a more holistic value mapped to you and the things that you're sharing about us. So right now we have a bunch of things that you can kind of prove on chain. There's also some off chain connections and things that we're adding in, like LinkedIn, being one example. But we're adding lots of other sort of Web2 kind of data points that we're asking people to sign in and validate. So really, that's the direction that we're going in, because that's our goal, is to build the best version, digital version of you, right? And we can only do that by giving you the opportunity to do that. Versus if all we do is build a system to value people purely based on, let's call it social fi, that thing already exists and caters to a certain audience, right? And also for us, we obviously the crypto audience is incredibly valuable, but a bit like where we started off with our games, there's also a very large addressable audience that we've kind of shown that are interested in crypto in a very different way, that love the idea of getting rewards, and actually their alignment of time and reward is very different. Let's say to people that are in for FI right now, the reward they expect for their time is like 1000x, versus what we've seen on the consumer side is actually people are happy with a much smaller return, because that's maybe not their full-time job, right? They have a full-time job and they're just looking for supplementary income, or they're just looking for some money to pay for their movie ticket at the weekend, or whatever it is. It's a very different psychological mindset that they're bringing, that then maps to their expectation of what that value should be. So yeah, I think we are trying to look at this much more holistically, and basically just recognize that everyone has got a uniquely different value, and to try and build a system that fairly rewards that.
I'm curious because we see a lot of crypto as outsized return, and that is why a lot of us are in this space. I can take $10,000 in crypto and I can possibly turn that into 100,000 in one day. It's very hard to do that anywhere else in the world. That exponential return has also been seen for a lot of these like leaderboard programs that are working with airdrops or go to market strategies. My question is though, if you dampen that really low, does that hurt the flywheel effect? Does that make it yes, you still have consumers that are willing to get, let's say a 1 to 2 return of value for something that they're engaging with. But does that dampen it too much?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just about we need to just lean back a little bit. Because we all just spend an insane amount of time on Twitter. Your frame of reference is often like what the algorithm is showing you. So kind of the earlier conversation about if you step into, like, let's say, this AI audience, yeah, sure, of course there's some people there that made a lot of money maybe in Q4 around virtuals, for example. Basically, it's like an incredible business. But I saw a tweet that called it like the pump.fun of AI agents, right? I'm not going there to use a AI agent, or I really believe in the future of AI. I'm going there because, to your point, I think I can make 100x on a low FTV launch. But I think if you step out of it, I think some of the recent, like, AI TGs, for example, I'd imagine some people have never heard of these companies that have had a very successful TG, have got an amazing product, have got already millions of dollars of ARR, got tier 1 listings, because again they're not trying to cater to this InfoFi bucket, or have not built a product and go to market that is already setting itself up for something that they can't deliver. So I think there's also just a practical point here, which is we're preparing our go to market for a token, and I think there's also just a misalignment there that, to be honest, is not a battle that anyone can solve right now. Hyperliquid have kind of tried, where you have a distribution methods whose goal is also to make money, right? And they have certain metrics and criteria that they're looking for. So you also have some business decisions to make, right? And I've seen lots of tweets on the timeline today about this, in terms of, is the token the product, or is, should you actually be building revenue, and where the business? And again, like you've got kind of two camps of both, some in the middle. But I think that's also just a thing that we also just need to accept, right? That typically, that also will alter the go-to-market a little bit, because if you want to get the most optimal listing possible, you've got to work with the exchanges based on the outcomes they want. Does it make it right or wrong? Well, no. Just like the people that want outside games, that's not right or wrong. It's just, if you create an economic system that is built like that, that's what happens. So I think for us, we are building tools and products for for Web3, for people within crypto, but also at the same time, we are very interested and recognize billions of consumers that we've kind of proven with our games already are interested in just entertaining experiences on blockchain rails, and whose motivation is very different. So you just kind of have to make sure that you kind of lean into both, but just accept that there's slightly different outcomes.
Yeah. I mean, that's I totally agree with that point. I think it's a very like truthful, like no hype, like realistic take on how you have to analyze this stuff. I'm curious, because you said you're talking about TGE and analyzing that. Can you walk me through kind of like what that process has been like for you? Not a lot of people talk about before it's happened. There are a lot of people talk post, and they can, say what was right or wrong, but like in the moment now, like going through it, like what are your concerns? What do you think are your like potential like big wins around it? Like, and how are you approaching it in the scheme of things?
Well, I think the way, so first of all, very fortunate to have it's one of the great things I've always loved about Web3. There's a lot of people that will just give their knowledge and time. So very lucky to have just some incredible friends and founders around me that have been through TG pretty recently, not so recently, and all kind of sharing learnings and feedback, so that you don't necessarily have to go into it into it cold. But it's just like crypto, things change by the day depending on what's happened. So right now, how we're thinking about it is this: a bit like we're trying to build an ecosystem where there are lots of different potential revenue sources that could support the token, independent of the token performance. So we started off with our games that are now revenue generating. We're trying to look at a path to the consumer graph in itself. You have a couple of clear revenue models there. We've got lots of AI companies that want to license the data. It's just a difference in our model. You can license the data. It's just there's got to be the permission from the users, and make sure that there's that value exchange back from the people that saying, yes, you can have my data. And then the second part is, as we continue to grow and people start finding out what we're doing, I used the Kaito Earn reference earlier. They're interested in terms of, okay, how can I start querying these user profiles that you're doing? Because I'm interested in accessing them and offering them kind of rewards. So again, that creates revenue there. But then when we think about the token specifically, I would strongly argue, if you study a lot of the kind of data that's happening, you talk to a lot of people that have TGE'd, how much, I mean, outside of a couple of obvious examples like a Hyperliquid, for example, that are doing huge buybacks against their token that actually make a significant difference. Because I think that's something that, if you do the maths on it, the amount of revenue you need to make to meaningfully buy back your token for it to actually impact your FTV is quite a lot. But when you think about your token,
it's very serious.
Yeah, but when you think about the token, it's almost like you do need someone focused on that token as much as I have someone focused on my actual product that drives revenue, because you have to think about you have to create a whole model just for your token, and build in lots of unknowns in terms of volumes. You need to think about spot trading versus perp trading. You need to start mapping out, okay, who are the people actually buying tokens versus just hunting for airdrops? Okay, the people that are buying tokens, where are they? What, centralized exchange or decentralized exchange platform are they on? Where are they in the world? And do I have the outreach in that specific country to start talking to them with the narrative that I have? You potentially need to start thinking about who's buying tokens. Well, liquid funds and, let's say, Web2 institutions that have got crypto exposure. How do they think about crypto? Are they very big on ETH? Are they then thinking about ETH beta plays? And you have to think about how you present your business to them. So the long and short is you have to put a lot of thought into that. It is way more than just narrative and hype, because what I can share with you with these funds, they're not stupid, particularly Web2 funds. They don't, narrative and hype, fine. I want to actually see revenue model. I actually want to see like business revenue, business plan, all this kind of stuff. So yeah, the long and short is, I would argue that the token very much is a product in its own right that needs a lot of thought and consideration. It doesn't just stop at TGE. You need a whole load of momentum. And in an ideal world, although I'd argue in crypto, based on some projects, you don't actually need to. The token is the product, and number go up is the best mechanic for mercenary capital. The numbers going up, lots of people start talking about it. I don't know what this thing does, but I'm just going to bid it because it's going up. Lots of people are talking about it. But I think increasingly we are in a world now that is transitioning in this, I call it the institutional era of crypto, where revenue is becoming increasingly important. Where if the token is becoming fairly volatile, or maybe some things don't go well with the token, at least as a business you can continue to operate because you've got revenue coming in that may result in more of a mid long term view of the token. So yeah, thinking about it a lot, giving it the sort of respect and diligence it deserves, because we have investors, we have a community as well, so we have a sort of responsibility to make sure we do the absolute best we can with the sort of go to market and the not just the TG but the ongoing performance of the token. So yeah, I've had to kind of man mark the actual product and the token product and make sure there's some people in the middle that are aligning both together. But look, it's a fascinating exercise. It's not something they teach you at like university or college, right?
They should at some point. I feel like we're not far off from it. I mean, it's a real, and I was having this conversation for around loot stuff, and you can have a real business has revenue, but there probably should be a token strategy. And like at some point, it's almost like, well, why isn't there a token strategy? For a lot of these, like any new company that's coming out, if you want to play in that space, and then it's like, well, then what does that token strategy look like? And where I've seen a lot of companies mess up is their whole business has been based off of getting to TGE. And if the token doesn't do what people think, then the business falls apart, the revenue falls apart because they have, users. And then it becomes like this like cycle of token down, business down. So token goes down more. So business goes down more. And you have to make sure that they are kind of isolated in some way. But still being able to play in the same pool. It's a fascinating and complex
it is,
setup.
and also it's we're in a totally different cycle to 2021, and you think Pump.Fund, for example, and some other platforms fundamentally changed token launches. There's just so many tokens now. And yeah, it just makes it even harder. And I mean, you kind of repeated to an extent what I said with all these token launches. The best way to grab someone's attention is to make them money, i.e., that token number goes up. So if you want to sum it all up, that's your job. You need to figure out a way to make that number, go up. But the other thing that you see that then creates conversation is it never just goes up in a straight line. If it does, there's clearly something maybe happening.
There's a rug incoming eventually.
Yeah, exactly. But also, if you look at like the team at Rex doing an amazing job. They've been building, smart people have been accumulating, and that's going on a really good run. It's pulled back a little bit, then people talk about the pullback, maybe some people kind of sell, but that conversation drives more eyeballs, people leaning in, and it's gone up again. The same incredible job that Lucas and the team have done with Pengu, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I think that's also part of it. It's that those ups and downs create, buying opportunities, selling opportunities, discussion opportunities. And there will be people that want to discuss the fundamentals of the token and what the product does. But there's also, for every one person that does that, there's another person that, again, they just draw their lines on the chart, and it's more about, is this thing going to go up and down, and reading sentiment on Twitter and watching inflows. And that's what they trade off. So I think it's just a fascinating, crypto is just a great place to be in. You can be very cynical, or you can just embrace it for what it is and try and understand all these moving parts. So, I've got no doubt that, whatever we, again, it's just part of being a founder in crypto. Whatever you do, you're going to get FUD, because you can't make everyone happy. You can listen to people, but I can't please everyone. So when we launch our token, I'm sure there's going to be some people that think it could have gone better. It could have, inevitably gone higher, but hopefully there's going to be some people that have been with us on this journey that believe in what we're doing, that, are happy with the launch and some of the things that we announce afterwards. But yeah, I mean, I did karate combat last year, so I'm not afraid of a fight, but but yeah, like, again, this is, I think that's my mindset. It's just trying to embrace it, and you take the kind of punches along the way. It's just part of building a business. It's not unique to crypto. I've had it in Web 2. Look at when people drop their results on the Nasdaq and the share price goes down. Everyone's really angry, and the CEO's an idiot, and the CFO doesn't, unless it's the CFO that's been at a Coldplay concert, that's slightly something different. But if it's the CFO that has done something wrong, the CFO's an idiot. So it's just part of doing business. So yeah, I'm enjoying it, but also at the same time, it's just a constant learning curve as well.
Yeah. Oh man, there's so much happening in your life right now. I feel like it is, you must be absolutely overwhelmed, but you're really working at the forefront of everything. The forefront of gaming, the forefront of uh aggregation of information, and putting that into AI, and then obviously the tokenization side of stuff. So I'm curious, from all of the things that you've touched and learned, what is like your biggest like like walking away today? You'd be like, wow, that's a standout. Like, was not expecting this, but the biggest lesson we've learned over the last few years.
So yeah, I think probably the two biggest lessons I've definitely learned, and that's what's led us to Consumify, is don't necessarily obsess about like how you get there, right? Our initial goal, like back to the start, is we basically just want to find a way to fairly reward people for their time using crypto rails. We tried loads of stuff. Maybe the stuff we tried that people, certainly in Web3, that maybe really liked, actually didn't work at a business level. And that's why, game dev is a great background, right? You mustn't emotionally get attached to the business ideas. It doesn't mean you mustn't care about it, but we're not a project, right? We're a business. I'm not doing this for a hobby. So these kind of Bitcoin games that have grown really quickly, they went from like 30,000 to 800,000 users. Did I think that's where we would end up? No, but I've not let I've not let kind of sentiment or FUD get in the way of actually finding a business model, and then listening to those players and consumers, the things they keep asking us for. Then that's kind of where Consumify has then come from. We wouldn't have got there if we'd have just lived and died by the sword and try to find this Web3 game with kind of NFTs and a token and try to figure it out. Because I mean, look at the state of Web3 gaming at the moment. So I think that's been one of the kind of biggest takeaways. I think the second thing is, behind all of this is, like, operationally is just really important. It's more than just you as a founder. It's about having the right team around you, having the right, I mean, I'm a big fan of them, people get criticized, but having the right advisors around you. I'm very grateful for the advisors, and honestly, some of them I consider friends now I have around me that keep you true. They're not yes people, right? They're people that I want to challenge me, tell me when they think a decision maybe could have been better, or I should have gone left rather than right. But I think that operational side is also really important, right? Just having a good idea and getting a bunch of likes and retweets is just not enough to build a business, right? You need, again, back to gaming, and that my biggest takeaway being kind of data led, and actually a large enough group of people that enables you to build a business with revenue is really important, coupled with having the right people around you, the team, the kind of community that you can take on that journey with you. It's actually incredibly difficult to do. It really is, and it never stops. But yeah, I'd say those couple of things, again, they're ongoing process, but I think those two things are always important.
I love that. That's banger. Clip it. Amazing. Not enough people talk about that. Not enough people highlight the importance of that. It's often an afterthought. Me personally, hearing that, I think it's good to hit home and be like, yes, the people around you matter so much. And they can't be yes man. If they're yes man, then you're gonna have problems. I will leave it at that. I've experienced it. I know other founders that have experienced it and other teams that have experienced that. There should be pushback. There should be people making you critically think, and making sure you're making the right choice. Because it is very easy to make the wrong one. John, this is awesome. I got so much out of this. It was a conversation that I thought would be very complex, but you broke it down in a very consumable way, pun intended, I guess. I'm curious for the people that are listening that want to get to know, obviously they can follow you on Twitter at John Hook, but what else can they do to get involved, to learn more, to engage with what you guys are building?
Yeah, of course. So we've got maybe another week. We're in private beta at the moment, deliberately, just because and again, it's a great thing about having a community and early users in. We have about 6,000 users now, but it's great because before we just go crazy, we're just making sure like some of the basic stuff is there in terms of like, are people clear on the thing that they're doing? Do they understand how it works? Can they use it? Right. So we're still finalizing that, but of course, very interested in, if people got a genuine interest in AI or, some of the things we've spoken about, maybe you're a creator that's interested in some of this AI tooling, please just DM me, reach out. We'll kind of get you set up. Obviously, you can follow Consumerify on Twitter as well, but we're getting pretty close to just opening up so anyone can start signing up, maybe in a sort of week or so as well. So yeah, follow along. Feel free to DM me if you want to dive into anything a bit deeper. Follow David D. Lear on Twitter, so you can kind of see some of the more technical stuff he's putting out, and you can see AI David. You can actually see some of the things that I'm talking about. And yeah, I'm sure we'll get clips of this done, because I just love doing things about this, right? Because you just have a natural conversation, and yeah, you're trying to figure out what we're doing, and you find some things interesting that we can then use and clip and amplify. So yeah, just really appreciate your time and the invite to come on and just talk about it.
Of course. No, I mean, look, people, I'm a fan of what you're doing. People speak very highly of you. You're obviously also working in a part of the, not only just in the tech sector, I guess is the best way to put it, that I find fascinating, and is still one that consumers aren't used to because it's never existed before. And that's the coolest kind of product to me. I'm so excited to see what happens. I'm curious, Chainwise. I didn't bring that up. What are you guys doing Chainwise?
Yeah, so we the consumer graph, the protocol is EVM compatible. Solana's integrated. There's a couple more chains coming. So at the moment we've got, we're very fortunate, like Near, we're one of our early investors. Ilya's like the godfather of AI. I found it quite funny that Laudia were kind of farming Ilya's white paper on Solana, which is kind of ironic. But yeah, very fortunate. We announced a partnership the other day where we're using like Near's AI technology and Near Intents for some of the things that we're doing. We're going to announce a few more partnerships kind of coming up as well for chains that we're deploying on as well. So yeah, that's where we're at.
Amazing. Well, look, I again can't co-sign hard enough. If you're not, make sure you're following John. Make sure that you go and check out PlayEmber. Make sure you check out Consumerify. We'll have to have you back on as things progress, because I want to know how things are evolving. And obviously when we can show more of the product and how I'll have to even get involved here. We'll have to show what I've made by bringing all of my information, aggregating that all in, and my agent. It could be a fun series of how things evolve. So I'm very excited, man.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we'd love to have a AI hunter in the world. And
Maybe 100's enough. I don't know. Maybe
yeah, I know.
I
We'll see. But yeah, but that's it, right? We, any creators that are listening or listen back and want access, we're allowing people beta access because that's how it works, right? We don't want to talk about the tech. We want you to talk about what the tech, the thing it does for you, right? That's what gets people interested rather
yeah,
than huge deep dives on decentralized AI and consumer AI. So yeah,
exactly.
we'd love to. But yeah, really appreciate it, man. I appreciate your time. I know you were slammed, and like me, both just with about a minute to go, we're like, right, let's go.
But good conversations. They're not
Yeah,
bad
yeah.
good conversations. So, John, thank you again for hopping on. Again, everybody, make sure you're following him. We'll stay in touch. And thank you to everybody for tuning in. We're back. More streams coming. More amazing people like John joining the show. So stay tuned. We'll